I think the key words that I've come away with from speaking with you and reading Steve Hassan and Joe, talking with Joe Zimhart and others on this line have been care, compassion, and understanding. Those are the fundamentals that will get you across to anyone, in almost any circumstance. Is if they get that from you, that speaks much, much more than if you know the specifics of the Thetans or the space aliens or the OT3 stuff or any of that. That stuff is incidental to care, compassion, and understanding.
Even also I think it's a good point. I mean, if you're sitting with someone who you love and you notice that they look tired, or you notice that they have a scrape that's not been attended to because they haven't had time, you want to remark about that. Oh, honey, are you doing okay? You look exhausted. Can I get you something? Do you need a Band-Aid? I might have something here in my wallet, in my purse. Just show that you care enough about them to be able to have that level of awareness and noticing them, really noticing them. And that you want to be able to respond to them because they're being surrounded by people who are really not noticing those things. In fact, that's a weakness, and you're not supposed to spend time really tending to yourself and having other people around you tend to you. But it feels really good when someone notices those things and cares enough to say something. And you don't say it in a critical way where you say, well, it looks like they're clearly not letting you sleep enough, and they're not taking care of you, and look at that, and how long have you had that before? Just, what can I do? What can I do to help?
Or just the observation.
Or
wow, you look tired. And then shut up. Let them talk.
Yeah.
Let's see what the reaction is to that. If they get all defensive or whatever, you just go, dude, sorry.
Right.
You look tired. I'm sorry. You do. That's
right,
it.
Exactly.
I'm not blaming this on anything. I'm simply saying I care. You know what I mean? It's that sort of just innocent. I'm sorry. You look tired. I'm sorry that I'm noticing that.
Right, exactly.
Sort of thing. So you don't. So there's no, argumentation there. You know what I mean?
Right. The other part is that you don't want to come across like you're doubting what they're saying, that they're somehow lying to you. Now, it could be that they are, and it could be that this is how they really feel right now, or they think they feel, or that they really haven't had a bad experience yet. It could be that they've said yes to everything, and they've been gung-ho, and they've done everything they were asked of, and they haven't questioned anything, and so their experience has been good. And if you say, really? Then that's going to be the end of that.
Again, it's an instant shutdown when you do stuff like that.
Yeah, because you will have known from accessing the information you need to access before you have that conversation that there's plenty that happens that's bad in that group. But maybe so far they haven't experienced it. And so that's okay. And you can be really happy for them. And at the same time, at the same time, you want to ask them certain questions like, and these are the things that help them think, and you're not coming across as being critical, you're really, again, wondering out loud, but really you know the information. Well, I'm glad that your experience has been a good one, because I care about you, and I love you, and I want to make sure that you're really enjoying yourself. And I'm also wondering, what happens if you're taught something that you're not quite sure that you agree with? Has that happened? Or have you noticed that with anyone else? Has anyone questioned what's being taught and what they're supposed to do? And how does that go? Also, has anyone left the group? Because it might be hard that you feel you're getting close to people within that community and then someone leaves. I don't know, what's that like for you? And also, what's that like for them? Or, how are they talked about after they leave? You know that they are criticized. You know that they're defamed. You know that they are cut off from.
And you'll probably get very thought-stopping sort of responses to some of these questions, too. Be ready for that. You might not get real, honest, thoughtful answers. Oh, yeah, people leave Scientology. They're just jerks, Yeah, they just do bad things. Oh, yeah, critics are always people who they have overts.
Right.
These kind of things. These words start coming out that are just, they don't have to think anymore about that.
Right.
So that could come up in response to that, and so you just go, okay, and you just maybe, could you explain that a little bit more? You know, like, I mean, and maybe a wonderful question might be, you know, he's a critic of the church now. Oh, he has overts. Well, first off, what does that mean? Could you explain that to me? You know,
Right.
Oh yeah, well, he's just done bad things. And what bad things did he do? You know, like just gently find out what the person actually knows, because the whole point of thought stopping is they stop thinking. So if you gently get them talking about those thought stopping things, they'll probably realize they'll stop being able to answer the question, because they won't have answers to those questions, because they've been trained to stop thinking.
Right. So sometimes what I have talked to people about when they've been open to coming to talk to me, because, you know, a loved one says, would you mind just meeting with Rachel and talking to her about what your experience has been like, and helping us all as a family or as a couple or whatever talk about this. I'm happy to share with them what I've learned and what I know, but I also will say very honestly, your experience might be different. And I might not know what your experience is like, and I might not know what's going to happen to you within that group. And I really want to hear from you. And I hope your experience has been different, because I've heard some pretty bad stuff. And I invite them to teach me. And I invite them also to try to convince me. And I'm open to being convinced, because I don't know everything. I'm not there all the time. And also some cults just operate in one place, but there are other cults that have different locations, different orgs, different churches, different ashrams, different
political meetups. I mean, we're not talking about just religious groups here.
Right.
You know, we're talking about any mind control, high control, mass movement situation. Yeah. You know, everything we're talking about here could apply to an extremist group having to do with gay rights. There's nothing wrong with gay rights, but you can have extremists, right? Any group can become one of these kind of activities. Yes. A Republican group, a Democratic group, any group can become an extremist type activity or a high control group, depending on the leader and how the leader is dealing with the followers. Right. So this is not just religious organizations that we're talking about.
Right, exactly. Good point. There are also people who are these sub-leaders, some of whom are nice and some who are not, some who really love the power that they have over people. And then people in those locations are going to have a much more abusive experience there. And so they're going to need actually more assistance to try to get out. They're actually going to usually be afraid for their safety, afraid for their lives at times, but afraid of leaving. But they have heard, if they've been involved in something for a period of time, they've heard about how people are talked about after they go. And it's either that they were too weak to handle it, or they disappointed the group in some way. It's usually that they've disappointed the group. They have given up the cause. They are now lesser beings. They've sort of lost their status. That was the devil that was guiding them to leave the group. So when you ask someone in a group if people are talked badly about when they leave, and they say no, it's just not the case. That's sort of part and parcel with what makes something a destructive cult. That sometimes people stay in for much longer than they had wanted to, just because they don't want to be talked about that way and they don't want to be thought of that way. So I think you can put out the question, is that something that you worry about? Do you worry about how you might be talked about and how you might be seen? And it would be such a shame if you did worry about that. And this is your opportunity as a loved one to say, because what I know about you is this. I know that you're a good person, and I know you're a fair-minded person, and I know that you're a holy person, if that's sort of your proclivity in your family. And I know that if you left something, it would be because you had reasons to do it, and good reasons, and that it was probably difficult to do, and that you would want to be supported. And I would feel bad if you weren't supported. Sometimes also people stay in because they know that they're going to be cut off from their friends or their family who are still involved in the group. And so they're very fearful of that. And so I think you can say, is it something that you worry about? And if so, I would feel very bad for you that you have to go through that and you have to go through those losses. But we're here. We're here for you, and we will always be here for you, and you'll always have a place to come back to. That's an important thing to say. People in cults will often be worried that they burn their bridges, and that when they've had to make calls to loved ones and say things that were unpleasant or accusatory, or write them disconnection letters, or do things that made them feel like there was no home to go back to, or no marriage to go back to be able to say, no, I'm still here. I really am, and not to worry. You always have a place. There's always a choice. Plenty of cult members do often feel like they have to stay because there is no other place. So remind them that there is.
Excellent. Well, we're running low on time now, so there's one last thing I wanted to ask you about, because I get asked this all the time, which is, when you run into a Scientologist or a cult member of any group, really, on the street, they're proselytizing, they're out doing their thing, is there something you can say to them that will plant seeds or get them thinking or get them to leave or something like that, right? And I've always said, well, yeah, no, not really. There's no one command. There's no one statement that you're going to make to somebody.
Yeah.
I've always said that it requires that you know the person, and again, comes down to care, compassion, and understanding. If you don't understand that person, how can you possibly say something that will, make a difference? But I'm kind of wondering, from your experience, how would you answer that question?
That's a great question. And it's a difficult one, especially if you see people on the street, they're usually not by themselves. And so they have other members of the group right there. And within a cultic system, no one is really safe. People are watching other people's behavior and they're reporting back. And so sometimes you're going to get a response that's not really based on how that person feels, but based on what they know they have to say, because they don't want to be written up and they don't want someone to report back to the leader that they said the wrong thing or they revealed something about how they really felt. It's reminding me of coming across followers of Lyndon LaRouche in San Francisco one time. I was with my kids, and they had never seen me do my thing before. So I said, we're not actually going to get on that trolley right now. Hold that thought. Just stay right there. I approached the table of people who were working for this political cult. And there was a man who was really boisterous, and he came up to me and he was sure that he could get me to believe in their cause. And he was using one phrase after the other that you could tell had been sort of kind of given to him as a script. And he was very slick. And I thought, okay, I don't think I'm going to make an impact with him. And also the other people behind the table who were working for Lyndon LaRouche were watching him. So he was the leader of this group. There are all these sub-leaders. So I just was pleasant, just listened to him. He also used a phrase, which is an awful phrase, where he said, if you believe in government the way it is and don't want to change, then you really have drunk the Kool-Aid. And, knowing people who got out of Jonestown, you don't use that phrase, really. You don't ever use it. But cults will often talk about other cults. How we're not a cult, but that's a cult. So he believed that I was being brainwashed because I didn't believe the way he believed. It's a little trippy, but that's the way it is.
Oh, I've definitely run into that.
Okay. So what I noticed, though, while he was posturing and talking and all of that, was I noticed a woman behind the table who was looking down and looked exhausted and looked kind of depressed. And I just let him just blah, blah, blah for a little while longer because he did what he needed to do, go through the script. Thank you very much. I took the pamphlet. I walked over to the table and I handed this woman my business card. And I said, if you need anyone to talk to. And she actually called a few months later, which was amazing. So sometimes just by being a person, just by being caring, just by being nice, just by showing that you've noticed, like I looked under, she had these long bangs, and I looked under her bangs to see that she looked like she didn't know what she was doing there, but she didn't have a choice. And she probably wanted to leave already for a long time, but felt like she couldn't. And I showed her some sort of humanity. But when you go up to someone who is proselytizing on the street, I think you can say, oh, this is actually really interesting to me. I'd love to talk to you about this more. Do you have some time? Like when Jehovah's Witnesses come to my door, I mean, my kids actually, think they live in a very odd house sometimes because I'm actually disappointed that I miss them because I want to invite them in.
Damn it. I wanted to talk to them.
Like, Mom, you're going to be so upset. There were Jehovah's Witnesses. They came by, but you were out. And, oh, man, I can't believe, Anyway. Not because I want to lure them in or trick them, but I actually want to be able to spark some sort of critical thinking. It's a missed opportunity for me. It's a missed opportunity for me to be able to have a conversation where I feel like they're getting reminded that there's another way to think about this. And there's another way to think about the world. And they don't have to necessarily believe that this is the only way, and if they leave this way, then everything else is going to be bad in their lives, and they don't have to be scared. But if someone is trying to proselytize, they're doing what they feel like they need to do, and sometimes with a really true intention, that they're trying to save you and they're trying to help you. And I think what you say is you say, thank you. And tell me a little bit more about your experience. And who are you? Are you from here? I kind of circumvent the talk about the cult, and I go to the person.
Right.
And how long have you been doing this? And, you're from this area. And I remind them that they matter as people, not just as voice pieces for a cult. I'm curious actually to hear from you. If you had gone up to someone to proselytize, is there something that would have made an impact?
Yeah, that's where I kind of go, well, no. Because it was full armor on. I'm out in the public and, and I'm here to get this particular job done, selling books or, doing whatever. And I am in a position where I expect resistance. I expect catcalling. And of course, doing that sort of work, you get that. Oh, L. Ron Hubbard, yeah, he said that, you the only way to make money is by starting your own religion. How's that going? That sort of thing. So you expect to receive those catcalls and whatnot. So it's full shields up.
Yeah.
So things are not that you're talking to somebody who's not really into listening to you, particularly. And what you just suggested is so brilliant because it's not just a one sentence thing. It comes back to the care, compassion, understanding. You have to understand that person. So tell me, if somebody had said, oh, well, tell me about your experience in Scientology. Well, you get the first sentences, which are the facade veneer. Oh, it's all wonderful and great, and I've never been happier, and this is all the best thing ever. And if you kept on the person, I think that's a great strategy. It's a great tactic to take is, oh, well, you've never been happier. Wow, that's amazing. Why? Why are you so happy? Oh, because, and then again, you're making them think with these questions.
Right. Yeah. So one of the things that I say to families, even where this isn't even a cult related case, if they are having trouble, let's say, dealing with their teenagers, I will say the unexpected. Get their attention. Because they're used to you walking into their room and saying, this is a pigsty. Was there a tornado? Right? They're used to it. They're prepared. Right? So...
there's very little that they don't know about you when you're all under the same roof.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And they're expecting that you're going to have the mom lines or the dad lines or the whatever. So say the unexpected. And if you walk into the room and you can't find any of the furniture, like it's just covered, I think you say something like, wow, this is amazing. Did you sell your furniture? Because I didn't what did you use to sell your, like, use some sort of humor. It actually, or if you walk in and you say, oh, it looks like you cleaned. That's incredible, because before everything was up to here, and now it's just up to here.
Certainly cleaned the room of all the furniture.
Right, exactly. Exactly. I know. Do you have a family of 5 living under there? Just whatever. Just something that where you kind of circumvent the predictable. And you keep it from being an argument. It doesn't have to be an argument, but especially if you're expecting resistance and you're expecting to have something be made fun of and you're expecting to hear the word cult, then you make sure, as the person walking up to someone who's proselytizing or person who's been approached by a proselytizer, to not say the things that they're expecting you to say. I think you can say, I have read a lot of things about this group that are unsettling to me, and I don't really know that I can get behind, because it makes me worried. And what I'm probably thinking is that some people have an okay experience in it and other people probably don't. Have you been able to protect yourself from some bad experiences there? And it's just like a very reasonable, like, I'm concerned, even though you don't know this person, are you having these kinds of bad experiences that I've been reading about? And if they say, oh, well, those were all written by people who are X, Y, and Z, like, you don't have to pay attention to that. You can say, well, then I hope that that's true. And I hope that it hasn't been a bad experience. And I hope that if it becomes a bad experience, that you'll know that there are people you can talk to about that.
And that's it. Then you walk away.
Yeah.
That's as far as you're going to get with that person at that moment in time.
And you're even, and you show that you're noticing them as a person, that they're being used, again, as part of this well-oiled machine. They're doing what they have to do. And for some people, they're doing what they feel like they need to do in order to really help you and help the planet. So again, they have this kind of good intention. So they're not the ones to attack. They're not the ones who are really trying to harm you in some way, and they're not the ones to make fun of. They're doing really what other people have guided them to do. It's the leadership that if you're going to attack, anyone in your mind or verbally, whatever, it's the leader. It's not the followers.
Right.
They're victims in this story.
Exactly. You won't be taking out the queen bee by, pinching a little worker bee off collecting some honey.
Right. Exactly.
That's not how it works. So.
Exactly.
Thank you very much for taking some time to let me set up some cameras and talk to you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And this was good. And talk to you guys later.